So I'm going to go ahead and pivot. Obviously, over the last couple of weeks, we've been doing our summer speaker series, and it's been really fun this year because I've actually pulled most of our speakers from internally, from within our territory. We've got an enormous amount of talent within our local organization here. And while it's fun sometimes to hear what's going on across the country, I think it's sometimes even more fun to just observe and understand and witness what's happening within our own organization. Just coming out of this call, we were actually recognized on the TVP call this morning as one of the top territories in the nation as far as growth in gross commissions this year so far. After the first 6 months of the year, we've had about 14% growth in total gross commissions across the board, which is impressive. Fred Sumner was the only person that was ahead of us at 17% growth in those gross commissions. So there's just some really neat things going on within our local organization here. And so last week we heard from Emily Haskins, who is a newer agent working to get to her tier 3 status. We heard about some of her struggles and some of the things she's doing to find success. Obviously, Emily has seen some incredible increases in income just over the first 3 years that she's been with the organization. We're going to pivot today a little bit, though, and we're going to go to one of our most senior veterans and one of the top producers on the team, Mr. Tony Letcher. Many of you know and love Tony. He's been an integral part of the team for many years. I will say that Tony started his career off working under Ray Plegans when Ray Plegans was a sales leader. Ray was a sales leader for a few years, and a number of years ago, Ray and Tony and the rest of their team, Derek included, kind of folded back under our Northern Indiana sales team. And so Tony and I have worked together very closely, obviously, for many years. But Tony agreed to come on today and just share some thoughts. I'm excited to spend some time with you today. Tony, I figured it'd probably be good for us to start off with you taking a few minutes to kind of tell your story. Obviously, I think everybody's got a unique path or journey that they took to get where they're at in the business. And so I know you did not come from an insurance or financial background, certainly came from a much different place. So you want to take a few minutes and just kind of tell us your story?
Most definitely. So, and one thing that's cool about our team is we have a culture. We're different, and that's one thing I've learned over the last 11 years in this business is when you talk to other teams, they're totally different. The way they run their businesses, just everything's so different than our team. But I also think that's why our team is so solid. And that's one thing I love about Silas bringing on some people within our team because they're part of that culture that you can kind of learn that culture because what we're doing, it works. So I started in 2013. Mr. Ray Plagans brought me in. It took him about 3 years to convince me. Prior to this, I was a sheet metal worker or a tin knocker for those in the construction business. I did heating and air on the commercial and industrial side. I worked my way up. I was in that trade for 16 years. I was actually a head foreman. I was running work. I was working directly for the owner of Deluxe Sheet Metal at the time at Union Station, which I saw he just sold the building behind it the other day for like a huge amount of money. I was a part of that project at one time. I was working with Amazon on data centers, and I mean, I was his lead guy. I was there, like I said, for 16 years. I loved what I did. I made great money. I had great benefits, had a great retirement, but something was missing when I was there. I was also at a point where I couldn't really go any higher, and I was just kind of looking for something new. And that's when Ray came up to me and said, "Hey, you need to try this." And I'm like, I don't know, because also I was scared. That's the hardest thing is coming to this business is, you're going from a job where you're getting paid every week to I don't know if I'm gonna get paid tomorrow if I don't sell. I've never really sold anything. I was great with people. That's why I was so good at my job when I was in the sheet metal business as a foreman. I was great at leading people and talking with people and understanding people. But I was like, man, I got 3 kids. I was married to my first wife at the time. I had 3 boys that were pretty young, and we had a good life. And I was like, I don't want to ruin this. But at some point, after I think 2 or 3 meetings with Ray, I finally said, hey, let's do it. What do I have to lose? I tried doing both at first. It didn't really work out. I remember hearing the term, you got 1 foot on the pier, 1 foot in the boat. You're not going to go anywhere. I know Gary's mentioned that before. So at some point, I finally said, you know what? I got to jump on the boat and do this. I've never failed at anything in my life up to this point, majorly. So I said, what's the worst that's going to happen? I was definitely a hard worker at that point. And I did. I struggled when I started, um, I think the first year, I mean, I probably thought about quitting 2 or 3 times. I was like, this is hard. The struggle is real, in this business. It's not for everybody. I think the most common mistake that a lot of people make when they first come into the business is they think it's a 9 to 5 job. I was used to having a 9 to 5 job, where you start at a time and then you're done. This business is not a 9 to 5 job. You're working all kinds of crazy hours sometimes because you're trying to get a hold of people that have a 9 to 5 job. And I think that's part of where I struggled when I first started. I think it was about a year and a half into the business, I finally got things figured out. Um, I remember I hit tier 4. I remember, so Keith Gleason, who used to be with us, Ray was friends with him. I was actually mentioned on his Monday show. He used to do a show for health markets, like a little call-in show where he'd talk about marketing and all kinds of stuff. I was featured on his show as a tier 4 agent on Ray Plagan's team. I remember it was probably one of the highlights of my career when I first started, being mentioned on his show. But going from that to this it took, like I said, it took me about a year and a half just to kind of figure out, it's a different animal for sure.
Do you know how many years in? Do you know how many years in you were before you hit tier 4? I don't remember that, but I don't know if you do
If
either.
it was about a year and a half to 2 years when I hit it, because I hit tier 4, because originally tier 4 was 100,000, and then they changed the structure of FYCRs. I think it was my second year, and they moved it up to 200,000. And it was a struggle to get to 100,000. I just had some things kind of all work out. Because it was probably about 9 months in, I was at a point where I was 3 months behind on my mortgage. I'm like, how am I going to pay the mortgage? And that's when I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I started working with Ray as an assistant to get some extra income. Um, but I also got to the point where I said, I've got to make this work. And that's when I hit tier 4. And then they changed the numbers on me. And that's when Derek had just started. He was, shot out of a cannon. He hit tier 4 overnight, it felt like. And I mean, I'll never forget the conversation me and him had of, I don't think we'll ever be tier 4 again, because it was a struggle to get to 100,000. How in the world are we going to double our business at 200,000? So this is probably 8 or 9 years ago. And now we're running at 500,000. It's insane. Ray's going to hit maybe 800,000 to 1 million. I mean, it's insane when I look at the numbers now. I mean, I will never forget where I came from. I'll never forget those first 2 years. That's who made me who I am today. That struggle I went through. So this is the part of your career, that first year or two, embrace it. Remember this part. Okay, this is the part of your career that sucks. Okay, because you're working your butt off. But don't forget it, because when you hit that next tier level and that next one, that's going to motivate you to never go back to where you were before. Okay.
So I know you've always been a big promoter of health markets in general, but from your perspective, what makes health markets unique and special?
Well, a couple of things. One, I love how everybody shares. Nobody's hiding secrets. Even when I was in the sheet metal tech, doing sheet metal, I'll never forget coming up as an apprentice. You'd be on a job site and the prints would be out, and a lot of the foremen wouldn't show you the prints. They wouldn't teach you how to read a print because they were scared that if you were better than them and you learned their job, they're going to lose their job and they're not going to be a foreman anymore. It's so different here. So the first thing I would say is just the fact that we're just things like this. You can get on here every Tuesday at 10 and listen to somebody that's having success in this business. You don't see that. Two, they make life easy. They're getting all my appointments for me. They're finding the technologies out, a lot of them out there. They're working hard to make my life easier each and every day. And that's one thing that I love as well. And then they're doing a lot of the advertising for us too. If I was all by myself, I'd be 100% dependent on myself. They're going out there going, hey, we're going to get the brand out there. So when you walk in somewhere or you're talking to someone, they go, oh yeah, I saw your national commercial, or I saw this, or I saw that. Then I also love how they're helping us more and more now on the marketing side, on the reimbursement side. That's changed dramatically from when I started, as well.
Yeah, that's really good. So going back to those first 2 years, because I agree, we have some agents who are in the thick of those first, 18 to 24 months. And, candidly, I'm 20 plus years removed from that at this point. So it's oftentimes hard to remember exactly what that was like and, what I even did back then to find the success that I did. I know it was a grind. I remember that. But what granular activities did you do early in your career that drove success for you?
Um, so I'm glad you mentioned that because I made some notes on the top mistakes that agents make, including myself when I first started. Um, so for some of you that don't know, I actually helped Silas train some agents for 3, 4, 5 years. I brought some agents in, so I've helped them train. I helped Ray a little bit because I was one of his top agents with new agents for years. And I've always just loved helping people. It's just, who I am. So whenever I do see people come on, especially if I see them having success or not having success, I'll usually reach out to them. So let's talk about, the last probably 5, 6 years, I've seen a lot of people come into the doors thinking, oh, they're going to be the next great one, or they're going to be really good. And then they do absolutely nothing. And then 6 months later, they're out the door and go, wow, what happened? Okay. Um, the first thing I think that I made a mistake of, and I think a lot of people make a mistake is, and I've already mentioned it, it's not a 9 to 5 job. Sometimes you got to call people in the morning. Sometimes you got to call people at night. You got to run appointments on a Saturday because some people, it's just when they're working. You have to get a hold of people or meet with people when they're free. And that's the hardest part I think agents have at this point is going, oh, I don't want to work a Saturday. I had a ton of success calling my leads on a Saturday because everybody's home. At least not everybody, but most people are home. I would call them between 9 and 1 every Saturday. I hated it sometimes. There was times I told a story at Celebration of I wanted to play in a wiffle ball tournament with all my buddies because they needed a guy. And my wife at the time goes, I don't think so. You're not tier 4 yet. You're not successful yet. You need to work. And I said, you're right. I do. And I said, you're right. So the hardest thing is, doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. Okay. And once again, you can't think of this as a 9 to 5 job. Okay. The cool thing is we do have the flexibility to run our errands or do things during that 9 to 5 so we can work before or after. Okay. The other biggest mistake that I think people make and that I made was it's not a 40-hour-a-week job either. You got to work 50, 60 hours those first 2, 3 years. Have to. Technically, I'm working more than that because I have 4 people on my payroll, you know, making up so I don't have to work as hard. So unless you have 2 or 3 assistants that are filling in those hours, you got to work 50, 60 hours if you want to be successful. You have to. There's things out there that you can use technology-wise to help you work less. But you got to work more than 40 hours. That was a mistake that I made too, because I was used to being done at 3:30 every day going, shoot, I get time to mow the yard and do this and go run errands. It's not the case, especially if you don't have a bunch of appointments that week. I think the other mistake that I made and a lot of people make is leads. They go, leads suck. I'm not calling leads. They're horrible. I had that for a little while. Yeah, they suck. They all suck, but we need them, especially when you first start. You need them. Okay. Most of this business is mental. It's a mental business. Okay. It's like everything in life is mental. Okay. You have to go into it saying, I had 1 out of 100. I was a good 100 leads I got. I got an appointment out of it. Okay. That's if you go in there going, oh, I had 99 bad leads. You can't think of it that way. You got to go, man, I had 1 good lead, and Justin's shaking his head because he's a lead guy. He knows that guy's calling 800, a day or a week. I mean, that guy's just killing it. But you should be buying as many leads as you can get. I would have 100 to 150, 200 leads in my funnel on Monday morning. And that's all I would do on a Monday. Whatever I didn't get done through the week, that's what I'm doing on Saturday. I'm just hitting the leads one after another after another. I couldn't even text at that time. We didn't have texting when I first started. That's how long ago that was. It makes me feel old, but we really weren't allowed to text. Texting wasn't a thing when I first started. So I was dialing the phone, 150, 200 times. So that's another huge mistake. I see people, they want to run away from the leads. Oh, they all suck. They do. I agree with you, but you got to have them until you get to the point where you're getting a ton of referrals. Another huge mistake is people don't want to invest time or money in their business. They go, oh, I'm too busy to go try to find leads. And I also don't have the money to invest. So they just sit around waiting for the phone to ring. I've seen it a million times. I'd walk into office at Ray's with some new agents. They're just sitting there. I'm going, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just doing this or doing that. I'm like, just wait for your phone. I mean, you're just waiting for it to ring. It's not, when you're brand new, it's just not going to ring off the hook. If you're not doing something to generate leads, you should be calling leads or walking talks. Chester, he's that guy is, every time I talk to him, he's like, oh, I'm walking here, I'm walking there. That guy's all over the place, man. If he's not calling leads, he's out trying to find leads. I mean, you got to do one or the other. I've seen a lot of people, they don't want to do either one of them. You can't do that. But there's also a huge mistake that I made, I've seen people make too, is on the marketing side. They want to market for a month or two. Oh, I ran this commercial, or I had a billboard, or I had a marketing in a magazine for 3 months, 6 months. I got nothing out of it, so I canceled it. Marketing is a long-term, and it's hard sometimes to judge marketing because you may have a lead call you back that you left a message because they saw your TV ad, or they saw your billboard, or they saw your print at a restaurant where they were having lunch going, oh, that guy just called me yesterday. They see, but they're not telling you that necessarily because they're not thinking about it. So sometimes it's hard to judge what your marketing is actually doing, to see if it's actually working or not. But you can't, if you're going to do marketing of any type, if you can't do it for more than at minimum of 6 months, and I would really say a year, don't do it. Don't waste your time and money on it. Do something else. Call leads. Okay. Because that's instant gratification. If you need somebody to call you right away and you can't wait, don't spend it on marketing if you can't afford doing both. I would spend it all on leads right now. That's what the guys down South Miami and all them are doing. They're just calling lead after lead after lead, and they are having success. They're just, I mean, work works. You know, that's something like Lisa used to always say, work works. Another huge mistake that I made, especially being brand new, is I was never prepared sometimes for my appointment or for a phone call that I got. So what does that mean? It's a lot of different things. One, you got to know the products. Okay. You got to know the products, but you got to know the process. Okay. That's the biggest part is if you don't know your P4L and how to go through that P4L, practice, 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 practice. Call your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles, your parents, your neighbors, your friends. If you're married or have a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend, have work it up, you know, do it with them 2-3 times a day if you have to. You need to know that thing upside down and inside out so you can flow through that process without even skipping a beat. But I've seen, and I've been in appointments with people, or I've watched them, and they're just all over the place, you know. And I'm like, man, and they'll get done, and I go, I'll be like, how'd that go? Well, not so well. Well, where'd you struggle? I go, well, you know, I don't understand this P4O. You know, they've been in the business for 6 months. I'm like, how do you not understand that? I mean, that is our lifeline. And I'll talk about it. The process is where I get most of my referrals from. Most of my referrals come the first 2 weeks after I meet with somebody. That person walks out of my office and goes, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about because I'm good at faking it. Okay. And next thing I know, I got Jane and Tim, and they'll call me going, so-and-so just left your office the other day. They said, you got to call them. Half the time they're in group and can't do anything, but they were so impressed that they're calling everybody they know. You need to call this guy, you know. That's why you have to know the process. Okay. Because the key is you're never going to know everything, but you're still going to know more than the person you're sitting in front of. You got to be good at faking it. That's part of sales. Okay. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. They don't know if you started today or if you've been doing it for 10 years, once you get really good at it. But that's where I get a lot of my referrals. And my wife all the time, it amazes her because she's like, oh my gosh, we just sat with so-and-so yesterday and they sent 3 people already. And actually, I got a family right now that I know. There's like 6 brothers. I helped in the last 2 weeks. I helped 5 of the brothers and 2 of their girlfriends with insurance because the first guy I sat with was so impressed that he's told those whole family, you got to talk to this guy. Yeah, okay. So that's why you have to know the process. Okay. You have to know the products. You have to understand open enrollment periods. Those are things that you need to study when you're not working. And you're okay. Because then when you have a phone call and they're asking you a simple question on something, boom, you got an answer. Go, wow, they're going, man, Cujo, this guy is smart. Because I talked to 7 other guys on the phone. They had no clue they're talking about. This guy, you know, answered my question in the first 2 seconds. Okay. So once again, that's why it's not a 40-hour-a-week job. 40 hours, you're running appointments, you're getting appointments. The other 40 hours, you're just learning products. What you got next, Silas?
So let's talk about your office. You've had a store
Most
for
definitely.
a long time. You obviously did a massive upgrade on it here. What was that, a year and a half ago? So do you want to talk like what percentage of your business is done in the office? What do you think about the office? Why have you chosen to invest so significantly in your office?
So probably 5, 6 years ago, I went strictly to face-to-face. I went to a storefront, strictly. I stopped going to people's houses. I was giving actually appointments away to people just because it, to me, is a waste of time. Time is money. As I got busier, I realized I can't drive around and see everybody. And there's so much business out there, I don't need to. I'd rather give to another agent, especially a newer agent that I trust, than spend a half hour on the road when I could be running another appointment or answering an email or doing something that's more productive. Um, I I'm probably 95% face to face. That 5% is probably ACA. I don't do a lot of Medicare over the phone. My wife is really good now about getting people not to do it that way, but just because I've had so much disconnect if I'm trying to talk Medicare over the phone. I hate it. Clients end up hating it. The only exception I have is I do have a good chunk of clients in Florida that don't come to Indiana anymore. With them, I do a Zoom. So to me, that's still a face-to-face because they're seeing me, they're seeing the products, they're seeing the presentation. Um, so when I say phone, it's somebody that I'm not doing a Zoom with. And like I said, ACA, it's pretty easy to do that with. Medicare, it's just too complicated, I think. And huge success. What I realized is people will come see you. If there's value in the process and they think you're the man or the woman, they go, I got to go see Tony. I got to go see whoever. And they value you, they will come see you. I got a guy that drives from Purdue in Lafayette every single year during Medicare open enrollment to do a review. He sent me a million people too, because he could probably find another 100 agents between here and in Lafayette that's closer. But in his eyes, I'm his guy. I'm his guy. I've got a lot of people that drive over an hour all day. Melissa, most of her business is from Rochester because that's where she was from. She knows a lot of family and friends in Rochester. People from Rochester drive to see her all the time. I have a lot of clients in Plymouth. That's another 45 to an hour drive. They come see me. Once again, they could find someone closer, and every once in a while they do, but they drive to come see me. When you're new, you don't have that choice sometimes. But I would, meet as many people as you can face to face, just because it's going to free up that time. And the sooner you do it, the easier it's going to be to transition. The hardest thing I had was when I was driving around for 4 or 5 years, and then all of a sudden making a change. I had a pretty good book of business. So I had some people that weren't happy at first. Over time, they calmed down, and I lost a couple. It's okay. So the sooner you go into a storefront, the better. When I first started, we didn't have storefronts. That's a whole new. The other thing I love about being in a storefront is I get to be with Mr. Mabry, one of the top guys in the nation. He drives me, I drive him. I learn from him, he learns from me as well. So it's nice being once again, we have our own culture in this office, just like with our team. So if you can get to a storefront with some of the top agents and just see them and be around them, it drives you to be better. When I'm in my office and I see people walking in his office every hour, I go, shit, this guy is on fire this week. I need to step my game up a little bit, and I only have one or two. It drives me to be better. Same with him. When I have two or three and I'm like, yeah, I just did this or did that, he goes, man, I need to make some phone calls. It keeps us honest. Sometimes we need something to motivate us to be better, because we get lazy, we get complacent at times. We go, life is good, I don't need another appointment. I'd rather go home and go sit in my pool or go have a cold drink, or it's hot, or we make excuses for everything. There's no excuse. Everybody's got an excuse. Okay. So find that motivator. That's what's great about being in a storefront. When you're around other people that are doing high activity, you're going, wow, what are they doing? And you can learn from that.
Well, and I will say, nationally, the agents who are involved in storefronts have 23% higher production than agents who are not. So not that you can't be successful outside of a storefront. I ran the first 10 or 12 years of my career without a storefront. So I'm not diminishing that reality, but I do think when you get involved, and I will say for those of you who are newer agents in your first 18 months in Northern Indiana, I actually rent space from Tony and Derek there at their office, and we have a shared space there that agents can go and work and use. And if you're a new agent, I'd encourage it, even if it's a specific day each week or 2 days a week, you're like, I'm going to go plant my butt in that office and I'm going to learn from Tony and Derek and the guys that are around there. I think that's a tremendous opportunity. If you're a part of Derek's team, he also has space in there for you. And I know a lot of you guys use that, but I'd encourage you. It's hard to replicate what it's like to be in an environment like that with successful individuals watching what they do day in and day out. So latch on to that. Tony, today, how many appointments are you running a week, like during the non AEP OEP season? What's your typical week look like from an appointment count perspective?
And we'll go backwards for 1 second and answer your question. The office that Silas rents is open all the time. All the time. There's plenty of room in here. So please use it. Okay, please use it. So I work normally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. A lot of people probably know that now, because I don't have to work Mondays and Fridays because I have a sub agent, I have an assistant, and I have a customer service rep now. So I've got to the point where I can afford to not work on Mondays and Fridays in the office. I still work a little bit, but not in the office. So I'm usually in here 3 days a week, and I'm usually running on average probably 10 to 15 a week between those 3 days, depending on the day. I'm usually running, most days I'm running about 3 a day, sometimes 5, depending on the week. Like the end of the week, a lot of times, or the end of the month, I mean, is when I'll have obviously those last minute people that need their 8-1s or 9-1s, and that's when I'll run about 15. But the rest of the month, I'm usually running about 9 or 10. Compared to, open enrollment, shoot, I'm running 25 to 30, Monday through Friday. So here soon I'll be working Monday through Friday again.
Right. Hey, going back to it real quick, I think Cheryl and a couple of people were wondering if they want to get in and use that office. I think it's Leslie who kind of runs the schedule,
Correct.
right? So
Yeah.
do you have an office number you could provide, or how to get a hold of Leslie, just so that if anybody wants
Just
to
email me and I'll put you in touch with her. How's that? Make it really easy. Everybody should have my email. Just
Yep,
email me and say, hey, I have interest, and I'll have her reach out to you.
perfect. So today, I know you're how many years in now?
So 11 years. I started 2013. So
Okay,
just over
11.
11 years.
Where are most of your leads coming from today?
So, so I stopped calling leads 6 years ago. So I haven't called one lead, and no one from my office has called a lead in 5, 6 years. So I am 100% marketing and referrals. So I'm spending around, I was doing the numbers today, it blows my mind, between $40,000 to $50,000 a year in marketing. A lot of that is in TV and radio, but I'm doing a magazine here, or a sponsor this, or a print ad here. Me and Dan Blackator are working on a big deal with the airport to plaster our faces all over the airport. So every time you fly out of South Bend, you're going to see me and Dan. I've been a big marketing guy locally. So that's where I get a lot of them. So I'm probably getting about 50% from my marketing, especially from TV and radio, and then I'm getting the other 50% from referrals. Like I said, and probably 75% of those referrals I'm getting within the first 2 weeks to 30 days of when I meet with somebody new.
Is there something specific you're doing to drive those referrals? I mean, I know you talked about obviously having a process that people are
Right.
willing to refer business to, but are there other things that you're doing, follow-ups that you're doing? Are you asking for referrals? You want to talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, most definitely. Um, so I don't want to say I come out and ask necessarily, but one thing that I like to do towards the end of all my appointments, because a lot of people will go, "Wow, this was very informative," and it's funny because even after we get done, they go, "Are you sure I don't owe you anything for this?" I'll get that at least half my appointments, just because it was such a process to go through, and because I spend a lot of time with people. I don't rush anything. My normal appointments at minimum of an hour. I've had appointments that go 2 hours before, especially if I'm doing ACA and Medicare. So I think people appreciate the fact that I'm spending an hour, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours with them, going through all their questions, because this is a hectic time for them. And then when they come up to me and go, "Hey, are you sure I don't owe you anything for, these last hour to 2 hours?" I go, "You don't owe me a dime. What you do owe me is I want you to tell all your friends and family, about Pony Letcher, about how I'm helping you, how you said, hey, you think I'm the smartest guy you ever met with, or whatever they say to me. Go tell them what you just told me." Okay. And they go and they laugh like Silas, and they go, "I will." And then I go, and I always give them 2 cards that are magnet with all their fun stuff. And I go, "Do you need more cards?" And half people go, "Yeah, can you give me another 3 or 4 cards?" No problem. And then sometimes when people go, "Wow, I love your pens. Can I get an extra pen?" No problem. You can have an extra pen. And I'll make you a deal. Every referral you bring in here, I'll give you another pen or two. Really? Because some people just love pens. I don't get it, but they just love them. Just simple things like that. But I like to make people laugh. I like to make them feel special too, because then they're like, "Wow, this is cool." The other thing is, part of our process is we do a 30, 60, 90 follow-up. Something else we just started, because we started using Levitate, is within 2 weeks of an appointment, we're sending an email out saying, hey, if we did a good job, give us a review right away. So here's the cool thing. We were at like, I think 1 or 2 Google reviews like a month ago. I think I'm in the 20s or 30s already after like a month, by 2 weeks after, because our process is they love me the first week or two after they meet me. Nothing's happened yet. The process was great. So we're sending that review out right away. Okay. And part of that review was, can you please give us a review? And if you know anybody that needs our services, please reach out to us. Okay. But then we also do a 30, 60, 90 follow-up with them. So part of that process is, hey, did you get your cards? Is everything going well? Because what I've learned is if you keep people happy, they're going to call their friends and their families, or when they're talking to them at a birthday party or whatever, they go, oh my, they're never going to forget you. And I've mentioned this in the past, is how are you different than the square next to you? When we look at the Brady Bunch squares on the screen, we have all these people on there. How are you different than the person next to you, above you, to your left, your right, your bottom? How are you different? You have to be different, because you want somebody to leave your office, leave your appointment, hang up with that phone call, and never forget who you are. You got to be different in some way, shape, or form. If you're boring and generic, they're not going to remember your name. When they'll be like, oh, we've all had that person that did work for us or helped us with something, and they're like, oh, you know somebody? Yeah, I know a guy, but man, I can't remember his name. I guarantee people don't forget Tony Letcher, whether they like it or not, because my magnet's on their fridge too. They got all kinds of stuff. We're following up with them all the time. I don't give them a chance to forget about me. And I tell them all the time, you're going to get emails from me. You're going to get stuff from me. We're going to bother you at times. Please don't, unsubscribe from my emails, because I don't want you to miss something in the future. If there's a problem with something, or it's a wrong email, or you're getting too many of them, reach out to me personally and we'll see what we can do to help you out. Maybe that's not a good way to get a hold of you. Because once again, I don't want them to forget about me. I want them constantly getting stuff from us and hearing from us. And it could just be Kathy calling, going, hey, it's been 90 days. You have any problems? Once again, they might have forgotten about me and go, oh, you know what? I'm glad you called, So you need to have some sort of a process in place for that, especially that first 90 days, so they don't forget who you are.
So Maggie actually asked, when you do your 30, 60, 90, you want to explain that a little bit more, maybe put a little more context around that? She was
Most
asking,
definitely.
emails, are those texts, are there phone calls? What are you doing there?
So we're going to more email now and text. So one thing that we use is we use Zoom for our phone services. We use it for a texting service, because all of my assistants and myself, we can all see one text, which is nice. So if somebody does reach out, we all have access to it. So the first 30 days, I call it my first 30 days, they're usually getting 2 emails. Okay. And if the cool thing is with Levitate, which we won't talk too much about that because a lot of you probably won't be able to afford it. But the one cool thing about it is you can see who opens your emails, which is pretty cool. I'm hoping the health markets at some point, either our CRM will have the same capabilities, or we can talk them into getting Levitate type system for us. Anyhow, so if they don't open their email, we can then shoot them a text. But the first 2 texts they're getting, the first one they're getting is just a Google review. Hey, thanks for coming in. Glad we could help you with what we did. Do you mind doing a review? That's the first one they're getting. Then they're getting another one within 30 days after their start date of, did you get your cards? Do you need help setting anything up? Do you have any questions? Do you need to make a payment? Have you made your ACA payment? And Kathy works on that. And a lot of it is carrier specific. So certain carriers, they have certain extras or cool things with it. Hey, did you set this up or set that up too? And a lot of times she's putting all kinds of cool PDFs and all kinds of stuff on there. Her and Melissa work on that closely. So if you at a meeting, talk to Melissa, she's really good with a lot of that stuff of what we're doing, because she did it and then Kathy took it over. So she's going to know more about that. And that's my sub agent.
And just real quick, let's give them context, because not everybody in the call knows what your team looks like.
Most definitely.
Just because you're naming names, and so I think some of the new agents probably have no clue who you're talking.
So Leslie's my wife. She does all my inbound calls. Okay. So she's booking all my appointments. She's getting all the information when they call in. And that's why she's really excited about Retire Flow, because that's going to help ease up some of her time. So she's doing all that front end stuff. And then she helps out on the very back end a little bit when the girls need her with stuff. She also books all of Melissa's appointments because so Melissa's my sub agent. So she's doing her own new business. She's doing some of my reviews. I do all, not all, I do most of the new business. So when somebody calls in that's brand new, I take most of that on. Unless they need like a 30, 60, 90 day short term, or they need just a dental or vision or something simple, she handles it. But if it's a new client, I try to be the face and I take care of it. She's helping them a second, third time, and then she also does all my ACA enrollments. So Leslie also books all her appointments, gets all the information for her appointments as well. And then I have Kathy, who I hired a little over a year ago. She does all of my customer service stuff. People that have issues with something, need help with a portal, getting a card, or claims. She's doing a lot of the claims as well. So that's my staff of 4 of us now. So what were we talking about before that? I forgot.
We were talking about your 30, 60, 90
Oh,
follow-up.
that's right, 30, 60, 90. So that's once again the second email for the 30 is the once again, hey, you got your cards, you need to make payments. The 60-day is usually is everything working okay? If they haven't got their card the first 30 days, did you get
a phone call?
It's still an email. So we're doing emails with everything. Okay. Unless we have a note on there that says they don't look at their email or they don't read text messages. We're trying to do email and text with all this just because it's simpler, it's easier, it's quicker. Okay. And then I have a record because the other thing that probably everybody here knows is when you do leave a message, people don't listen to the message anyway. And it's a nightmare. So I want to have a record that I got hold of them. So if I'm doing an email and sometimes in a text, I know they got it. And if they call me and go, hey, you never heard from me, I go, well, I'm looking at the email, I'm looking at the text message. If it's a voice message, I'm not sure what happened to it or if they even left one, besides our notes in the CRM. Like I said, unless I have certain clients that don't have an email or they don't have a smartphone, and there's a note on there that Kathy has to call them about everything. And then that 90-day, sometimes we don't even get to the 90-day because maybe after the 60-day, they're all good to go. They don't maybe need a 90. And some clients are needier than other clients, and they need that 90-day. So usually the last one is I leave that up to Kathy and or Melissa. If they don't need it, move on to the next person. If you feel like this person needs it, because maybe it's a complicated situation, maybe they have a lot of products, they're already struggling with some things, they may need that extra phone call or email or text.
That's good. So I want to we've only got about 10 minutes left here, so I want to fast forward just a little bit and talk. We talked a little bit about your advertising, your marketing. I know you do make a significant investment and you leverage your Lead Connect so for that $40,000 to $50,000 annual investment that you make. But let's talk about supplemental and life sales. You would not be where you are today if you didn't believe in supplemental insurance and life insurance. I think it's become a part of just who you are and how you roll. But do you want to talk to the team a little bit about the importance of those products, how you leverage them, and key things that maybe they can do to get better at cross-selling into supplemental insurance and life insurance?
Well, I was lucky enough to be in the time when we didn't get paid for ACA. So when a lot of the ACA products came out, what's that?
Some people don't know that or remember. So there was a time, for those of you that are new, that we didn't get paid a dime to enroll somebody in health insurance. Because the insurance carriers were not paying commissions for that. So we had to use health insurance as the vehicle to get in the door. And then we had to cross-sell if we were going to make any money on that. And that was shortly after the passage of the Affordable Care Act. Fortunately, we now get paid on health insurance again. But that definitely did shape a lot of us who are veterans in the business. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. So I think we had quite a few carriers when I first started. But a lot of the nicer carriers that paid us were a lot more expensive. So what I realized, and Cav was part of this, is we said, why not sell a product that we don't get paid on, save them $100, $200, sometimes $300 a month in premium because the reality is, I tell people this all the time, all the products with ACA, they all suck. I tell my clients this sometimes, they all suck. They're all this, they really do. The networks are very similar. They're all $9,000 out of pocket, they all suck. Welcome to healthcare reform. Okay. The good news is we have products that will fill that gap. And that's kind of how I approach with my clients. Hey, I tell them everything we're going to look at, you're not going to be happy with. You're not going to understand who they are. You never even heard of them. coming out, especially if they're coming out of our group. Good news is we're going to put a complete package, so if something happens, you don't have to worry about it. But we figured this out kind of early of, why don't I put them in a care source at the time? We talked about this yesterday, is I was one of the top care source reps when I didn't get paid on them for 3 years. I had 1,000 people in care source at one time. I never made one dime off a care source because they didn't have brokers. They didn't pay us. But I was one of the top cross-selling guys. I was making more money than people that were putting them in a health plan all by itself and getting paid, cross-selling the crap out of it, because I'm freeing up $200. I'm showing this really expensive health plan for $300, and then I'm showing $100 care source with 200 in subs, and they're looking at a line with like 12 items in it going, holy cow, I'm getting all that for the same cost of that? And I go, yeah. I go, wow, that to me, it's a no-brainer. I go, it is. Your doctors are covered, your meds are covered. And they go, wow, what a deal. Once again, the key with cross-selling is you have to show value. That's the key. If the client sees value in it, they're going to buy it all day long. It's no different than when they're selling you insurance on your cell phone. Why do you buy it? There's value, because that guy or gal that was talking to you about, hey, if you have this insurance on your cell phone for X amount a month, and something happens, if they explain it to you correctly, you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. You're buying it all day long. It's no different than anything else. Okay. If there's value in it, they're going to buy it. The first key is you got to show it. Okay. Just show it. I tell Chris Mason all the time, and Dan, I'm going to make t-shirts, with the Health Market logo that says, just show it, steal it from Nike, because that's the first key. You just got to show it. Most people don't even show it. They're scared. I don't know why they don't show it. Just show it. Just show 1 or 2 products. Start with something small. The accident plan is one of the easiest plans to show, and it's a guaranteed issue. Just start with that. Once you realize how easy it is, you're going to go, man, this is pretty easy. Dental vision, it's easy, to explain, and then just grow from there. You got to show it first. You got to show value. But the biggest reason why I do it is because I've seen so many of my clients impacted by the results of having it. We get emails, we get texts, once a month of somebody going, oh my gosh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I was uncertain when I first bought this. I wasn't sure if it was a good value or not. But now that I have it and I use it, I can't imagine my life without it. And that's something I always send to Melissa and send to Kathy so they can see it. And that's the part that touches my heart. And it makes me, and it forces me to not only to show it, but when I do get a little pushback, to say, are you sure? Cav taught us the famous question of, if something crazy happens to you tomorrow, you have a heart attack, cancer, stroke, what are you going to do? And you just shut up. I mean, that's that simple. So if they're fighting back on something, and you did a good fact finder and that they need it, especially if their income's $40,000 a year, they need this, because if something happens, they're in trouble. $9,000 out of pocket is 10%, or it's like 25% of their income. And they're giving you a little pushback. Just look at them and go, okay, well, if you do have a heart attack and you owe $9,000, what are you going to do? Just shut up. Because you just did your job as an agent. Because once again, we are one of the most important industries in the world, in my opinion, because we can make or break somebody's future. I've seen it happen before. One of the craziest stories I ever had is I had a lady that didn't get a cancer plan because I didn't show it. It wasn't expensive. She got cancer a year later, lost her job, lost everything. She's been on Medicaid the rest of her life because she's never been able to get ahead ever since she got cancer. And I look back at that and I said, I could have sold her a $20,000 cancer plan for, $15-20. That might have changed her life. She might be in a whole nother situation right now. I took that personal. And I tell people that story when I meet with them sometimes, and I remember the lady, she's like, oh, it doesn't run in my family. No one's ever got it. I'm not worried about it. I said, okay. And I moved on. I didn't even show it to her. I didn't even show it to her so she could see the price and go, oh, wow, it's only $20. Well, shit, I'll buy it now. I didn't do my job. So part of it is just, understanding the ramifications if you don't do it. Because you're going to get that phone call when someone's going to call you and go, hey, Tom, or my wife got cancer. And you go, oh, shit, they don't have a cancer plan. It breaks my heart when I see that, because, it breaks my heart.
Yeah. We actually, just a quick side note, 2 weeks ago, we had a client call us who's in Florida. And about 4 years ago, I had sold him and his wife $100,000 critical illness policy. And she was just diagnosed with, I think it was stage 4 cancer. And she's on a limited network plan. So this 100 grand is just going to give her some flexibility to go seek treatment at places that she wouldn't otherwise even have access to. And so, we're in the process of getting the claim filed and everything, but it's those kinds of claims change your world on how you think about supplemental insurance and the impact it can have on the clients that we serve. So I'm curious. I know you and I you've been through, in the 11 years you've been here, I know you've had some tremendous successes. You got to a point where your income was, is just crazy, honestly, and it's growing every single year. You want to talk a little bit about income growth, and I know you also a couple of years ago thought you were going to slow things down a little bit, and then you decided to pick things up a little bit. So I'm just curious that maybe
you
that
like saying that
a little bit.
I'm gonna go backwards one more time too about on the supplemental side when I have people cancel stuff and I make a note in there that they canceled it and then they call me. Like, I'll give you a great example. I had a lady that canceled her cancer plan. She's like, I can't afford this anymore. I said, no problem. Are you sure? And I knew she could. It was just a fact. It's more of a, well, she said, I don't think I want this anymore. It's a waste of money, whatever. I said, okay, no problem. And then she got cancer a year later. There's times I will kind of throw it back in their face a little bit because it also gives me credibility. Not to be mean, but I've had some people that then later go, "Oh my gosh!" So like when she called me, and I said, "Hold on, let me look," and I go, "Oh shoot, I forgot we canceled that cancer plan you had." Because especially with that lady, she has all the other subs now because she sees the value in it. She's like, "You're right. I should have never canceled it." She'll never leave me. She said, "You were doing me right. I should." So I don't do it in a mean way, but it's a way to make yourself even more credible, especially when they're giving you referrals. Then, because they tell them you need the cancer plan, you need this. They're walking and going, "Hey, so and so has this." So that's another thing that I make notes of, and I just kind of bring it up. Hey, we had this, we canceled it, whether it's an accident, whatever it is. But as far as income, yeah, it's stupid. So I am slowing down things a little bit because the last couple of years I did go to 3 days a week, um, which is why I brought Kathy on and I gave Melissa a bigger role. So here's the cool thing about my income's just exploded and every year it goes up 20%. And when your income's a big number and it goes up by 20%, I thank the Lord every morning. Me and my wife every day talk about how fortunate and lucky we are. We really are. The one thing I've learned though with this business is you need to take that growth and reinvest it in your business. That's one thing I've done to keep that number going up, because not only am I helping other people within my business, getting new sub agents, making their lives better because they're getting raises every year because my income's going up, but I'm hoping to bring on maybe my son in 3 or 4 years as well. Because I got a little complacent there for a while to where I was like, I'm happy. A lot of the veterans get to that point where they're a little complacent. They're like, oh, I'm making good money. I don't want to work that hard anymore. I do love helping people though. So that's the part I do love. Um, and I like competing. I'm like Ray and Derek. So as long as Derek's still hitting hard, we're in an office together, I have to compete with him. I can't let him run me over like a train, like he is this year already. But it is stupid after like year 3 or 4 when you put all that hard work in. And that's why, like I say, is I'll never forget where I came from. I don't want to go back to calling leads again. We were getting some of those Anthem leads, and I'm not calling those. Those days are behind me. I don't want to do that anymore. It sucked that first 3, 4 years calling leads. I hated that. But that's why I worked so hard those first 2, 3 years to get out of that part of the phase. It's kind of like any job you start at, you're going to start on the ground floor. You got to work yourself up. The harder you work that first year or two to prove that you're worth it, the quicker you're going to get promoted. That's the way you get to think of what we do. So if you hate calling leads, you need to call an extra 100 a week so you don't have to do that next year. And that's the key. And then what happens is that income starts growing, and then you have that income to reinvest and reinvest and reinvest. I take a good chunk of my 20% every year and I reinvest it. More marketing, more this, more that.
So we're kind of up against the top of the hour here, but I just wanted to give you a chance to, you've trained and observed a lot of other agents over the last decade. Is there one thing that you'd tell a new agent who's getting started that maybe you haven't already mentioned that you think, just some advice from somebody from your vantage point in the business?
Oh, 100%. So there's two major keys. Derek's laughing. because two major keys. One, it's all mental. This business is all mental. Okay, it's all mental toughness, and you got to be a little cocky with this business too. You got to think you're the best. I think I'm the best. Derek thinks he's the best. Ray thinks he's the best. Cab probably thinks he's the best. And so on and so forth down the line. Okay, we all think we're the best. Okay, in our minds, and that's all that matters. Okay, but I would tell you the one thing where I see where people are failing is they're just not working. You got to show up, man. You got to work. It's that simple. If like Cowboys talk about, you got to plant the seeds. Okay. You can't show up to work and expect results tomorrow. That's where people get frustrated. You got to have patience. Okay. And know that it's going to pay off. Okay. If it's not working, call another 100 leads. When I would reach out to people that were having issues and I'd say, hey, send me your PTS. And I'm looking at it, I go, well, I can look at it within 2 seconds to figure out why they're not doing anything, why they're not succeeding. They made 12 phone calls all week. It's like, come on, man, you're better than that. I'm embarrassed that they even sent it to me, to be honest with you. So if you're looking at your PTS and you're sending it in, you got 20 phone calls on it. It's like, come on, man, really? Why are you here? That's not going to get the job done. I want you to have 200 phone calls on there at minimum, a week. You got to hit that hard. You just got to work. That's what the key is. If you want to be where me and Derek are at, and Silas and Ray, you just got to work. I mean, me and Derek were lucky. We got to see Ray. That guy is an animal. He's working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day sometimes. So we watched him personally just go, holy cow, this guy is a machine. We saw him putting crazy numbers up. So he drove both of us, and that's why I think it was so special a couple of years when Derek finally beat him overall for the year. Because me and him talked about, man, and we didn't think we'd ever beat him because he just puts up crazy numbers. So for Derek to do it the 1 year was pretty cool to see. It was special for me as well to see him do that because Derek's a good friend of mine. But you just got to work. That's the key. Gleason talked about that all the time. Work works. It's that simple. There's no secret sauce. It's working. If you're not succeeding, it's because you're probably not working.
Yep. And I would 100% agree with that and echo that. I would, people ask me a lot of times when I'm interviewing them, why don't people succeed in this business? I'm like, the people who don't succeed just never go to work. I mean, I really think it boils down to that. And it's really that simple. And we go back to running appointments, scheduling appointments, and marketing your business. That's the work that has to be done that drives revenue. And I say it again and again and again. And some people get it and run with it. I know Justin's like crushing it right now, working really hard. I know Lauren Christie is working really hard. I know a lot of new agents are out there, really working the business hard, but it takes that to get it off the ground. So I appreciate you mentioning that because I think it's very, very, very true. So Tony, thank you for joining us today. This has been great. I know there's been a lot of nuggets that have been pulled from this. I will distribute these recordings that we've done once we kind of get through our summer speaker series. So you guys have the opportunity to go back and listen to some of the best in the business. Tony has risen in the business to heights, honestly, I don't think any of us ever expected. Same with most of our top tier 4 agents. They're at places today that I only dreamed that these agents would be of years ago. And so it's been a fun process. And I'm thankful to, count you as not only a business partner, but a good friend. We love you and Leslie and appreciate you contributing all that you do.
Well, and I'll say real quick too, Silas, is I was in everybody's shoes here watching and listening to this, thinking I can never do what this guy does or that guy does, thinking it's impossible. Because you look at their numbers or our numbers and go, wow, that's insane. I was in your shoes at one point in time, watching other people talk and going, man, this is insane. Anybody can do it. Part of it's just having the confidence you can be the next Derek, Tony, Silas, because you can. Emily, I'm watching Emily just explode. Part of it's just having the confidence you can get to where we're at. You can, 100%.
Yep, exactly. Well, Tony, thanks again for your time, buddy. I appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. I see Christy clapping, so I'll give you a little clap. So I hope everybody has a great day today. Join us next week. I'm actually putting together a more specific training for next week. I'll get you out some information on it. It actually might be a little bit longer session. I'll try to let you know that here in the next day or so. We have a life insurance carrier that wants to do some training with us. And so I'm hoping to bring them in next week. Tony, thanks again for being here. We appreciate your time. Everybody have a great week. Just go to work. Talk soon. See ya.
Thank you.